Good evening, this is Professor York here. Hope you're doing well. This lecture is going to be on talking a little bit about marketing strategy, but more importantly, it's going to be talking about the 4 Ps. You know, we're working with clients right now, and they're small businesses. And what the amazing thing we see when we work with small businesses, especially if they're not marketers, is they're fishing. They're on a fishing expedition. They're trying anything. But the reality is that sometimes they get lucky, but many times they're just on a fishing expedition and they don't necessarily come up being lucky. So I think what we have to think about as marketers and where we add value is to provide a little strategy, not just in terms of the analysis of the 5 Cs, but in terms of some of the decisions from the analysis, the data that we get from a strategic standpoint, in terms of what value, for whom, decision, okay, that STP piece as it relates to the customer, and then the action plan, which gets into the marketing mix of the 4 Ps, but it's that balance of the value creation and the value capture that's there. We'll get into it a little bit further. And it's not just a little strategy. I think it's a little bit more than just a little strategy. But according to Peter Drucker, really what the focus here is of marketing is to know and understand that customer so well that the product or service fits it, that customer and sells itself. We call that concept in the entrepreneurship space product market fit. So what's marketing's role? It involves understanding the customer, showing their relevance of the product to their needs, and removing or lowering the barriers to exchanging. And that's the value of education and differentiation. And last but not least, which is key in branding, which is building a trustworthy relationship. In many ways, marketing is the voice of the customer throughout the customer journey. So we'll talk about the 4 Ps, price, promotion, place, and product. But I want to put in perspective in terms of your target segment or your customer, because it needs to be driven by the customer. So who's your customer? If you look at this cartoon here, you go, oh, okay, it's women. Well, 18 to 49 is a pretty large group. So there could be subsegments that are there that help hone in. And as you can see, this gentleman on the right really thinks that he should just have the whole universe. So he thinks he's a marketer, but I think he might be a little disconnected. So the point is about segmentation. And quote Michael Porter, who wrote really the introduced segmentation back in 20 or 30 years ago. The segmentation is really to focus down on a particular population and go from the general population to really looking at subpopulations that have certain characteristics that are observable and demographics that fit to where you want to hone in on. So instead of just women who are 18 to 45, you may think about education, you may think about geography, you might think about, are they married? Are they, do they have children? So all these different factors start coming into hone in to create, in essence, an archetype. And that's what we want to do is, and you guys probably picked out in some of the discussions we've had with clients, is paint a picture of customer for us. So here's a decision maker who's a mom. She's a little outside of that 18 to 45 age group, but she has certain descriptive characteristics and demands. And so those are things that we need to think about when we create what we call a persona or archetype, because understanding that archetype will then help us in terms of developing our value proposition. It's also important in terms of understanding who your customer is so you can understand how to size the market. So if you understand the SOM or the serviceable and obtainable market, okay, you're focusing on a market that is realistic versus trying to say, we can get the PAM or the potential available market, which is everybody out there. So what's critical to customers' mind share and understanding, segmentation is very important, but that mind share is critical. And if you are single-minded in your value proposition, that your product does it all, and you haven't thought about the customer and the customer's needs or pains or desires, then you're probably going to have a disconnect, and you're probably not going to get what we call product market fit. So one helpful tool is that what we think about in terms of value proposition is a universal selling proposition. You also see this as a positioning statement. Is, for who our product is, what it is, the solution to the problem for the target customer that provides a benefit. Unlike, now this is your differentiation factor, and our product solution, and then this is the key point of competitive differentiation. If you memorize this, this will be great for doing a quick pitch for a business as well. But this is really core to your positioning, core to your brand story. So it's just something to keep in mind, but it ties back to that customer and that problem and the solution you're providing and how you're different from the competition. And tying in is we need to think about the Bain Triangle. And this is something I've shared with you beforehand, but this was published in Harvard Business Review last year. And what we think about is, value propositions, there are what we call a job to do. And they're different domains, going from societal impact down to functional. And what you're doing when you're trying to create a value is either relieve a pain or solve a problem or create a gain. So as you can see, quality is very important and quality of product is there. But there are other value propositions that a particular product or service can do, such as save time or create affiliation. And in fact, we have a product that we're going to be working on, which is going to be about affiliation marketing or belonging to a group. Okay, so those are some things that are there. Some people will wear certain types of clothing or shoes because there's badge value that's there. Or you buy a particular product because it makes you more attractive. So those are some things to think about as you put together your positioning, your value proposition, ultimately translating into just your messaging portion that ties in with the story behind your client and the client's value story. And tied into this is also positioning. I think it's very important that you think about what space on this 2x2 matrix in terms of product position. It was very, very critical that you think about it. So if you are in the wine business, and you are looking large distribution, you look at Two Buck Chuck. Two Buck Chuck is going to be in the lower left-hand quadrant. Low price, low quality, wide distribution. Okay, this is the product that is picked, machine harvested, and is basically fermented in. It's almost like a manufacturing facility that looks like a refinery for oil, rather than a custom crush facility that you would see with a boutique winery. So a boutique winery will be in more that upper right-hand corner where we have high price and high value. You need to understand the place. If you get in the middle, that's we call that the valley of death. So let's go into the 4 P's of the marketing mix. So product. Okay, so what about product? Well, I think there's some concepts about product that we need to think about. First is there's what we call the core product, which is the generic piece of the most essential benefits it traces, a basic purpose of a product. But then there's the expected, which really takes into what the customers take into consideration when buying that product, And most products that accomplish nothing more than their base are generic. Okay, so expected is really going a little bit further. That's there. But savvy marketers go into looking at how do we augment that product or create value added. And it adds a dimension where company or salesperson analyzes all the features and advantages of the product, goes beyond that basic functionality, goes into the benefits. Thinks about, the variety of things that can help justify higher perceived value, higher price. And then there's this possible product, which is the future of a product and ways it can be further improved We've seen this with Google, for instance, through market research and analysis of customer needs. I put the example of Epogen, or Potent Alpha, because that was a product that I marketed 20 years ago. There was a similar product to that product. In fact, it was made in the same facility, the same Potent Alpha recombinant, but it was Procrit. We sold in the same channel, which are hospitals. But it was because of the augmented product that we were able to dominate market share. And that was through service and education that we were able to do, and really focus in on a specific core segment, which was the dialysis business, and really add a lot of value. So we lived our tagline, which was, there was more to Epogen than a Potent Alpha. The similar type of thinking is used in the car business. You look at Lexus versus Toyota. You look at Affinity versus Nissan. Looking at Lincoln versus Ford, you'll see that there are a number of models that look very, very similar, but there are certain additional, whether it's styling, service, concierge type of service. I know that Infiniti has that over Nissan, that raises the prestige and the value of the product and augments it significantly, and as a result is able to justify a more significant price. And here's another look at the product concept. So we talked about the essential benefit, or the core, the actual, which ties into the packaging, the quality, and the features, and the brand name, because that's important. But then we get into the total product, which gets into service, credit, delivery, warranty, and all these intangible associations that are there. Okay, and I noticed this in the branded pharmaceutical versus generic pharmaceutical, where the services that the branded companies provide versus generic are very, very significantly different. Naturally, the price is going to be a little bit different as well. And just to tie into that, going into that augmented and that broader product is really the concept of branding. And I use Apple because Apple is probably one of the top interbrand brands out there. It starts as a philosophy, and that philosophy goes back 30, 40 years. Okay, and if you want to look at the YouTube from Steve Jobs back in the 80s, talk about his Apple marketing philosophy, he'll give you a sense. But that core philosophy helps drive what the philosophy and how you are going to represent your company brand and your product brand to your customers out in the marketplace. So what you are looking at is not just a philosophy, but you're building a relationship with your customers. And then that relationship is an expectation, but that expectation is based on a promise. And that promise is consistency, quality, the ability to deliver, and trust. And if you have that, that's why we are loyal to certain brands. That's why, in many ways, brands help us. They're heuristic, because branding, and this is according to Harvard Business Review in an article I just read last week, branding breeds what we call habitual buying. It's like automatic, because it's a problem-solving shortcut. I need ketchup. Boom, I look at, I got a whole shelf of different condiment products. Ooh, I see Heinz. I've always had Heinz. It's been consistent. I know what the flavor profile is. Boom. I want a particular type of wine. Oh, blank wine, or a particular type of beer. Okay, and I know the maker. For instance, I particularly like Sculpin, which is an IPA that's made by Ballast Point. I built that when I go out to buy IPAs down in San Diego. It's Sculpin, or it's Highway 78, Hop Highway, which is made by Belching Beaver. And so it becomes automatic that is there. And I have trust in terms of reliability. Budweiser, by using the Clydesdale, constantly is out in the marketplace with the Clydesdale just to reinforce the trust that is there in terms of the consistency of really from bottle to bottle, to can, to glass of Bud beer. So these are some things just to keep in mind in how branding really is. It's a promise of quality, and that's why we go buy Apple computers, iPhones, etc. And with branding, when we look at product follows a life cycle. And so you all probably have seen this in Introduction to Marketing, but we have those innovators who want the latest and greatest and willing to buy that product that might have some so let's just say some tweaks that need to be done. And they're willing to give that feedback because they want to be first in. But the earlier adopters are the one that really are the first bulk of folks who really like to try new technology but not necessarily the first in. But there's a challenge. And the next thing you look at in terms of product lifecycle to grow your product, which is very critical, is getting into this group called the early majority. And that's because that group is waiting for someone who can authenticate. And this is where if you can be able to cross that chasm, you can move into being a very, very serious brand and company. And companies that are able to do that are able to scale. Then last but not least is we're going from early to later majority, where you get really more, where you move from, oh, I heard certain celebrity has liked this and I'm going to go in and buy this product and be part of the group, to where the late majority is, oh, I've got distribution at most of the regional outlets and I have advertising that's there and all my friends have it, so I must get on the wagon here. And then there's some folks who they're sitting in their rocking chairs, okay? And they just don't enter into that relationship with the product that's there. And they are called laggards. So then we get into price. So we talked about the product and the augmented product, and I think price will tie in very well here because this is really one of the most important levers that a marketer has, and it ties back to profitability. And if you can be able to maximize price, you can maximize profitability. So pricing, though, is not about cost of goods. So it's not just tacking on, well, I have manufacturing costs. So if you've taken manufacturing accounting, cost accounting, a lot of times they'll say you price based on 1.5 times based on the cost of goods. When realistically, and then maybe tack on some other pieces that relate to services. But realistically, it's about value and perceived value of the customer and what the customer is willing to pay. So it's not just tack on, it's what's seen out there. And a very good example of perceived value is with Apple products, which maintain a premium price, but also you see it in real estate in terms of what up markets that are down, that are there. So, people, it's not what you paid to build the house or the land, but at the end of the day, what the market is willing to pay because they see value. And that's why location comes into being very, very critical. So pricing is where marketing can make a difference because it's getting beyond that cost of goods and getting into really capturing value beyond that cost of goods and marketing really to create what we call a perceived value and greater perceived value than the price's substitutes. And this is very critical in terms of when you have something that's say a Kirkland brand versus, say a branded motor oil such as Chevron, because there are differences there. And you can even say versus $2 Chuck and premium wine that's there. Marketing helps to create this perceived value so you can capture that additional pricing value and people are willing to pay for it. And it's not just, when we think about the marketing, it's moving from getting it more from that core product, the commodity, into different levels. And we call these levels as we move is a progressive economic value from extracting commodities into making goods to delivering goods, which a good could be delivered by a service that makes that good, to tying it into an experience, to tying it into something that's transformational. And what you're doing is that you're enhancing your ability to be differentiated. And as you differentiate that more and you become even more relevant to the needs of customer, then what happens is that you're able to command a much more premium price. So I'll use an example here, which is a very simple one, birthday party cake. So, as a commodity, just getting the essential ingredients, flour and eggs, etc. You can take it one step further in terms of having a pre-made from a reputable brand such as Duncan Hines. Now you have a cake mix that is perceived of greater value because now I don't have to have a specific recipe, and if I follow their recipe, I'm going to have a predictable outcome in terms of a product. But you may want to make sure that now you want to enhance it further in terms of something that is unique and specialty. It's crafted. You may go to get a birthday cake from a service or a bakery that specializes in birthday cakes. And this is particularly true you wouldn't do for a special birthday or for another special event, a wedding or an anniversary, etc., because you want it to be special. Taking that much further is the experience piece, which is for birthdays. That's why Chuck E. Cheese is so popular with kids and birthday parties, because now we're moving it from just a service of a product, but to a more experience, to take that, again, that birthday party example of, so how about something transformative? And we're going to take our child to Disney World. That's a major step above Chuck E. Cheese. And what has happened is we've moved that emotional resonance up. And if you think back to the Bain triangle, we've enhanced that emotional component. And with that, economic value. Remember, people buy emotionally, and we're willing to pay more if it touches those emotional touch points. So we're going to get into the next piece, which is place. Okay? And there are value to place. And we have physical and we have digital. For physical, we got to think about wholesalers and distributors, agents and brokers. Ultimately, you're moving your product through that chain to get the product from you, the manufacturer, to the ultimate customer, which will go through retail outlet. With alcohol, if you want broad-based distribution across the country, when you want a large brand, you are going to move it through various wholesalers who control the distribution. And they'll move it through various retailers who have licenses that can distribute and sell alcohol. What happens is that the value of that bottle of wine that you would charge in your winery, maybe it's $20. You may actually get less than $10 if you move it through the distribution channels. So as a result, if you're doing something that's a boutique product, you're not going to be able to extract full value. You're trading it off for something else. And what you're trading off is for broad-based distribution. So now you're looking to move from being maybe boutique 1,000 to 5,000 bottle winery to a 50,000 to 100,000. You have to make trade-off decisions whether that is worthwhile. So that's on the physical sides, and there are pros and cons to that. On the digital side, we see that there are two players. There are a few players. First is you have the App Store. Okay, both for for Android and for Apple. But one of the biggest things that we've seen is a lot more of the shopping habits are now online. So Google plays a role just in terms of SEO rankings for businesses. So they're a major distributor in many ways, the place for shopping that goes on or finding a service. So SEO rankings is one of the reasons why Google is so profitable. Okay, because they control where you pop up, and you have to pay for that, with AdWords. But also Amazon, because Amazon has become, as our buying habits have moved from physical to digital, Amazon has become the major distributor relative to products that are out there. And I know so many people who, with Amazon Prime, get everything. And remember, Amazon started as a book business, but I know folks who get their shaving utensils and shaving cream, and just personal products from Amazon, and they have them shipped. My neighbor's like that. He literally gets a box from Amazon every day. So, last but not least is promotion. And promotion is where a lot of folks get confused. They think that's part of marketing strategy. Promotion is tactics. Tactics follow strategy. Promotion is a way you get your word out to the customer. If you have not identified the customer, you have not identified your value proposition, your positioning properly, and your messaging, promotion is for naught. But let's talk about promotion a few different ways. First of all, there are a variety of promotional tactics. There are earned and there are paid. Earned, it's news, it's blogs, it's Twitter feeds. It's how Donald Trump was not able to have to spend billions of dollars to compete in the last election. Meanwhile, also, Bernie Sanders was able to leverage more of the earned, especially in terms of being picked up with TV, news, and radio reporting and interviews. Then there's the traditional paid, such as advertisements that we see on TV that we get besieged on relative to whether they be a pharmaceutical ad or a truck ad or a car ad that's there, that's paid for. So the key thing, though, is earn is free. And that varies from having PR to articles and news stories to interviews to communications, such as to followers through Facebook, through LinkedIn, through Twitter. And then blogging, which is probably one of the most valuable, especially if you have a website. You should have a very active blog so you can build a community and have a following. This is free. You have to put time into it. But it is also very credible because it's not necessarily seen as being promotional. And many times the topics that are being covered in these type of, I'm going to say tactics, may not necessarily be so product specific and message specific. They may be more ancillary. They may be, as you'll get into inbound marketing, maybe more customer interest specific. That's there. But what's good about it is you build a following and you get them to stick. And this gets into the difference between inbound versus outbound. Inbound is where you're creating content for a following and they begin to follow and they stick with you and build a community. Whereas outbound is really more your traditional media in terms of the push and pushing a consistent message through those various traditional or even digital channels, as we'll talk about in a second. So with traditional media, I think we're familiar: TV, print, radio, billboards, direct mail, and flyers. Things that are dropped at your doorstep. And major car manufacturers, beer manufacturers, they will put out those ads consistently because they want top of mind. Cars do it even though you may not buy a car for 2 or 3 years, but when you are ready to buy a car, you've seen those ads time and again that a particular brand is top of mind. So that's one of the purposes behind where we see a lot of this direct traditional media push to keep things at the surface. And it helps with brand building as well, and also supporting, because you're actively not building your brand, but also using your trademark. Now, digital has really come into its own in the last 10 to 15 years. And it used to be you had a website. Now, it's not just you have a website that's parked. You have an active website. And there's strategies around the website that we'll talk about later on. But a website has to have tied in as a blog that makes it with its content dynamic, and it needs to change every week so that you stay in the top search, and you have keywords as well, so that you're being seen by Google, which is going out and searching, see that your content is staying current. Why is that important? Because you pay less for Google AdWords, number one. Number two is that you get a higher ranking. Social media is very critical and has been a big driver in terms of followings. And then also search and banner ads just that pop up when you do Google searches. And tied in this, as we talked about, is the SEO, search engine optimization, AdWords, which we'll talk in a later lecture. Then there's the whole concept of automated, which is tying in with mailing lists of customers that are automatically programmed so that there's constant contact, e.g. could be vis-a-vis email. And there's some great email programs like MailChimp, Constant Contact, that can put out on a regular basis information that can help with customers thinking about how to use, or maybe there's something like, for instance, if we have for breakaway tours, what's going on Central Coast and activities that people may not have thought about having a group, and we need a transportation service that ties in with an event. So this is where digital does come into play, and it is really changing the landscape for marketing. And then there's social media. And I think we're all familiar, savvy with social media. Facebook and Twitter are the two cornerstones. But there's YouTube, Instagram, WeChat, in China, particularly in Pinterest. But these tie in with your digital. And if you've got it, and there's a whole strategy in terms of your social media. If you're doing it correctly, you're tying your social media that drives your audience coming in to your website. And then with your website, you set it up, you're setting up call to action mechanisms so you can capture that audience and maintain that relationship. And then even in our entertainment, product placement. You see this in terms of American Idol, where you have the Coke glass that's standing up there, or you have a place in a particular movie with a Ford Mustang. Okay, or BMW in the James Bond movies are classic. And that just didn't happen by happenstance. There are agencies that work with producers of TV and movie, make sure that those products are included. Now, last but not least, is I want to touch into, from a strategic standpoint, getting back to, we talked about the funnel. But when you do tactics, you have to think about how it ties into strategically. What are we trying to accomplish in the funnel? Moving them into the funnel, making them aware, but moving them quickly through to an action. And how we integrate is very key. And so when we do various tactics, or we allocate resources towards these promotional activities, we have to have key metrics to see, one, cost to acquire customers, we talked about last week, how effective that is. And we do look at that. So we have certain metrics that look at reach. We look at the ability to get that customer into the funnel, and then the efficiency of the various tactics to move the customer from awareness into action. And I'll give you a very good example. How many of you remember, either on radio or TV, where there'll be a certain product that is promoted and they'll say, like MyPillow. MyPillow, I just saw it this weekend, and it says, use this promo code and you'll get a certain discount, or you get a 2-for-1 deal. Okay, they're tracking the effectiveness of that advertising. In fact, the MyPillow ad was tied as a product placement into a TV show that was on Saturday night. So, strategy does drive your tactical mix, and there has to be management because you're making an investment. And with that investment, you want a return. And that's what we want to bring to our clients at the end of the day, is that strategic thinking. So as they're investing into their advertising, they are getting the maximum return. They can reach their business goals, and they're not just going on fishing expeditions, but they're much more focused on who their customers are, with their value proposition, how are they going to reach them, how they're going to get the message to them, and how they're going to get them into the funnel. Anyway, a lot more to talk about in future class, but hopefully this gives you a good foundation. And if not, what it'll do is give you a great review on the 4 Ps, tying it back to customer and strategy that you probably had touched on in a previous class, such as like introduction to marketing. Anyway, have a great evening. Thanks for your time.